Hello and welcome to the EnSpirit podcast, where we inspire you to develop and enhance your entrepreneurial talents and skills. This series is packed full of information, tips and interviews that help you change and find the edge in your game. I'm your host, Beju Solanki. I'm a performance psychologist and I've been working with entrepreneurs and business owners for the last 25 years, helping them improve their game. To find out more information about me, please look on all social media platforms, but specifically Clubhouse and Instagram. Before we launch this week's episode, I'd love to tell you about the Change Your Game scorecard. If you're struggling to achieve what you really want and you're not sure where to start, the Change Your Game scorecard will help you identify where you need to improve. Life is a game, and there are 3 core games you need to conquer to succeed in life. That's the inner game, your mindset, your emotions, your thoughts. Your game plan, that's your strategy and your roadmap. And then your outer game, how consistent and persistent you are in taking actions. The Change Your Game scorecard will help you identify how strong you are in each of those games. Please visit changeyourgamescorecard.com for more information and get your report today. Thank you for listening. Welcome to the next podcast, and delighted to welcome Joe Gregory here today. How are you doing, Joe?
I'm great, thanks, Beju. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. I'm excited about today because I don't know much about your journey. Just to give people some background, I published my last book with your publishing company, your book publisher, Rethink Press. This is not what this podcast is about. I want to know about your journey and how you got here. So there might be people out there thinking, "Oh, do I want to be a book publisher?" Maybe, maybe not. It's a very at the moment. It's a very a lot of people are publishing books.
Yeah.
It's a great time to be a book publisher. But how did you get there? What did you do? So just to give a brief synopsis, I know you did something in digital marketing very young.
Yeah.
Where did it all start for you, Joe?
Yeah, so it probably started just before that. Like I was into books as a kid. Like I loved books, and I remember going to car boot sales. I don't know if your whole audience will know what a car boot sale is, but I used to go there.
They're not that young.
I used to go there looking, like hunting for books, and I came across greats from Tony Robbins, How to Win Friends and Influence People, kind of the age of like 11 or 12. And so I'd be going around and people would be selling these books for like 20p, ridiculous amount of money for an amazing book. And I remember once one book I picked up, I think it was Unlimited Power by Tony Robbins. And I remember I was embarrassed that I had this book. Like I picked up a book with such an audacious title. But I handed over my 20p and kind of like walked out. And it would have been like, I would have been less embarrassed as a kind of 12-year-old carrying like Playboy under my arm. And I'm kind of like, hide the cover. Like I've got this book called Unlimited Power. And I remember like the power of books, just getting the title can really kind of make you think, is this possible? And so I've always loved books. But I didn't do well at school. Like I wasn't a particularly academic student. You would have kind of seen me sort of in the middle, like I did okay. And I knew quite early I wasn't going to follow the academic route. My older sister did. She went to university. And so I was quite kind of quickly thinking, no, I'm going to end up being kind of in some kind of business. I don't know what it is. I did one of these things at school where they tell you what you're going to be, and they put copywriter, and I didn't even know what a copywriter was then. So I'm like, oh, that sounds naff. But interestingly, so I did college for 2 years after school and trained as a graphic designer. And then I got a job for a year. I just went around with a portfolio, got a job in a design agency in Birmingham, creating graphics. And then, you know, my ability to write was quite good. So I did some copywriting as well. I found out what that was. Okay. And I wrote some of the copy for brochures and stuff and enjoyed that. I did it for a year. Loved working there, but I thought I can't see myself doing this for the next 10, 20 years of my life as an employee working inside this thing. And I was really inspired by my boss. The company was called Stuart Green Advertising originally. He started his own business when he was like 19. And I was inspired by him. You know, he was kind of in his 50s by the time I was working with him. He's had this successful business in Birmingham, you know, well-respected business for a long time. And I thought, I think I could do that. So I started genning up. And again, coming back to books, I remember thinking, I've got to get better at writing. So I bought a book which was called The Right Way to Write. And it was about grammar and stuff. And I started like studying. Everybody's like, why are you studying all these books? Like when you know, in your break, everybody else is kind of playing computer games. I'm like, you know, I just like went up skill. But a year later, I thought I'm going to make the jump and I'm going to move on. And I'm kind of resourceful at certain things. So I could do a bit of website design, and that was a new thing. This is 1997. It was kind of a new thing then. And I designed a couple of websites. And I thought, you know, that's what I'm going to do. So I made a website for a small recruitment company. And I got paid like, you know, at the time I was paid like less than £1,000 a month in this first job. It was a junior job. And I made a website for a company. I got 1,400 quid. I'm like, that took me like a day. That was a day and I made £1,400. So I did one. I thought, I reckon I can make a living at this. So I did a few more. And I don't know if it was luck, judgment, just being in the right place at the right time. I landed a really big client, probably as my third client, which was, it's now known as Aviva, but at the time they were merging, it was Commercial Union and General Accident. So I landed a really big project. My sister, my older sister, who was, you know, she's 7 years older than me. She'd already had a brilliant career as an engineer and in recruitment. And I called her and I said, like, join the business. I need your help. You're a grown up. Like, you'll know how to run a business. So she joined the business. We got this big contract working for now Aviva, but it was CGU. They became and had to take on team very quickly. So we recruited a team of techies, got offices in the middle of Birmingham. Built a 12-person team within 3 years, and you know we were building, the turnover was getting close to 7 figures, and we had a few clients, and we were kind of building a reputation for being able to do kind of digital marketing. But it wasn't called that back then. That wasn't the name for this. Part of that was about the communication, so getting the communication right and the messaging right. But I got like to a point where we'd grown the team, we had employees. I was 23 and didn't know what the hell I was doing in that position. Like, I didn't start a business to be anybody's boss.
So can I just stop you there for a moment? So you got to 23, nearly 7 figures, team of 12, blah blah blah. It's very easy to people listening thinking, oh, you had no challenges. It must be very easy, very smooth. What was the reality of the situation?
Oh yeah, good question. So one of the challenges was I'm extremely shy, and because I was so young, people didn't take me seriously. Right. So I had real issues around networking and selling. And again, coming back to books, I read a great book. I think it was by a guy called Jeff Birch. And in that book, he said, just ask questions. You'll be the most interesting person in the room. So I got really good at asking questions. Came across another book, which was Spin Selling, which absolutely fitted with my approach to selling. Great book, Spin Selling. And so I just thought, all I have to do is ask questions. And the sale, like, you know, with an intent to deliver value and help people. And the selling kind of started taking care of itself. And so did the networking. So I got really good at asking questions, and then really good at reflecting that back and creating briefs for clients. So they go, yeah, this makes sense. This is what we wanted.
Were you not afraid of failure?
I had nothing to fail to. So I came from, like, I grew up on a council estate. I didn't have any money. As I say, my first job was less than £1,000 a month. There was nothing really to lose at that stage. So I often admire people that have gone from like a corporate career, or they've got a lot at stake from building what you'd see as a traditional career, and then making that jump into entrepreneurship. I think that's far scarier than starting out and thinking, I kind of don't fit the employment model. I'm just going to kind of do it my own way. So fear didn't really come into it. I just thought I'd start again. It was genuinely kind of I could just start again if this doesn't work out, and I haven't got much to lose. I mean, in hindsight, like that's a brilliant thing to have. Like, now I've got more I could lose. Like, you know, now consequences of actions kind of weigh a little bit more heavily before I just jump in. But then I didn't know any better. I didn't think about the kind of downside so much as just, you know,
so you're quite courageous when you're growing the digital agency. You're courageous in making decisions, asking questions, and growing it. And by the naivety of not understanding failure allowed you to grow the business.
I think so. Yeah, pure naivety, and you know, and that's reflected. So the business became frustrating. At a certain point, I'm like, I don't know how to manage people. And with the best books in the world, and I had some training, and I went and sought some training and coaching. I just didn't have that experience and that time to make that skill set up. My job wasn't really to be a manager and a boss at that stage. And so, you know, in hindsight, being like, you know, the naivety coming in hindsight, I could have got, in quotes, grown-ups to kind of manage some of that stuff, some of the operational stuff, but I didn't know that was possible then. And so I created a business that I kind of started to dislike because I'd got a lease on offices in the middle of Birmingham. I was doing a commute every day, which I could have avoided if I'd have been more thoughtful about how I built the business. I was commuting an hour each way every day into the centre of Birmingham. I had, 12 people, quite a few of them, because this was the heyday of tech where people could actually command a decent fee for coding. We were paying people, you know, twice what I was taking myself to build the business and to make the business grow. And that, you know, in hindsight, that's a naive approach to doing it. And most of the team are older than me. So there was a lot kind of weighing on me that I just thought, I'm out of my depth here. I don't know what I'm doing. My sister was great. She created a lot of the processes, but even between us, we started to think, this isn't our perfect day. this isn't what I signed up for when I built the business. I just wanted to be a bit, have freedom, a bit of autonomy, do cool projects, and enjoy kind of learning and building something exciting. So I liked all of that. I didn't like the commute. I didn't like managing people. And so kind of 6 years in, 2003, Debs, my sister, and I, we sat down and we mapped out what is our perfect day. What does that look like? And it
That's
didn't
quite
look
a
like,
courageous thing to do and potentially leave what you created behind.
yeah, well, and we actually did that. And I'd say it was, again, not stupid naivety, because I think I had a business that could have been sold if I'd have known what I was doing then. Or what I know now, if I'd have known then, I wouldn't have approached it the same way. But we planned our perfect day. It was working with smaller clients, coaches, experts, consultants, not the big kind of corporates that we always felt like the odd people in the room there. We were kind of entrepreneurial. At the time, it was kind of a hierarchical and closed way of doing things. We never quite gelled values-wise with some of the things they were doing. And the smaller clients we worked with, the coaches and consultants, we really love working with them. So we want to work with more of them. We don't want to be owned. So what tended to happen, we became like the outsourced digital marketing for some of these companies.
Right.
And that doesn't feel like autonomy then. It just feels like you own a job. And you need the pay. We had some big clients. We probably had 5 or 6 main clients, and then like 30 kind of peripheral clients. So we kind of had our eggs in a small basket, and we didn't want that. And so what we designed was what we called the Lean Marketing Masterclass, which was our way of getting out of it was to design this program where we teach small expert businesses how to reduce the waste in their marketing. And I had a lot of issue with the agencies at the time. We were up for some awards, and I remember going for an award for something we'd done. And this London agency, like they were looking down their noses at this kind of weird Birmingham-based startup. What are you even in the same room as us for? And I quite quickly realized, like, the model for agencies at the time, I'm not knocking agency models, I understand how they work, was find out how much money the client had and then spend it. It wasn't what can you get as a result. It wasn't a direct marketer's mindset. And I'd read, again, going back to the books story, which have always been there, I'd read every book going on copywriting by this point, anything I could get my hands on. Trying to think, like Ted Nicholas.
In all of that journey from designing your perfect day, moving from publishing, and what was there a challenge that keep on reoccurring that you were?
Yeah, to me it was freedom. So I always thought I was in it so I didn't have a boss. Like, I've always thought that was why I was in it, and I think that's a recurring challenge. Is I just, when it looks like I'm free, I start to see the cage that I've kind of created for myself. And so it always seems like that. I mean, even today, I think, well, responsibility kind of comes with the territory. So I'm kind of more easy with it now. But I'm aware, even building Rethink Press, which is what it is now, to the size it is, that comes with responsibility. I can't just like disappear. I've got to show up and be here and be part of it. So I think this illusory freedom that I'll just do what I want whenever I want, like the complete time freedom, is possibly going to happen if I ever retire. And I'm okay with that now, but I wasn't necessarily at the time. I was still seeking this kind of illusory, like, freedom from responsibility while having the lifestyle.
And would you say you were naturally attracted towards that sort of entrepreneurial lifestyle where you wanted to be your own boss and create your own freedom?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I was inspired by my boss, but if I go back a little bit further, I used to sell clothes. Like when I was at college, I'd sell clothes. I'd buy and sell clothes to the other students because I was on a textiles based course. Before that, I was always kind of thinking, I did a little gardening, and I thought I'm never going to do a paper round because that looked like a really bad return on investment for my time.
Right.
And so I'm like, how can I create a gardening service? And I kind of did a few of the neighbors' lawns. So I was always kind of thinking, like, how can I redesign this? But I wouldn't have necessarily, I don't think I even knew what the word entrepreneur meant a lot of the time as I was kind of growing up.
Okay.
I just knew what I didn't want to do. Was necessarily get a job. I saw my dad work so hard. No, I'm not disrespecting my dad. He was a brilliant man and a hard worker. He was a plumber. But he worked his backside off when we were still always broke. And I didn't want that. I thought there must be a better way. There were other people that aren't working like that and aren't broke. And so, that happened, his entire life was, until the day he died, was working. Right. And then spending, work and spend. And so I didn't want to do that. So I just kind of tried to find my own way, but it was really about freedom. I wasn't even that focused on the money. It was doing cool stuff, being free to do it without too much kind of in the way of that.
And for you, freedom then is just having enough money so you could be free as
Yeah,
opposed to
absolutely.
being a millionaire or
Yeah,
billionaire.
yeah. Make the choices that make me happy. And I mean, we'll jump forward, but I co-wrote a book called The Wealthy Author, and we defined wealth as that, which was, you know, mostly time freedom and autonomy to do what you want with your time, not necessarily a financial number, because that varies depending on what you plan to do with your time. So we did that. So we planned out this perfect day, and we realized like it didn't involve offices, it didn't involve employees, it involved me and my sister doing stuff we were cool at. And partly what was going on in my head is like, I'm never taking, you know, at some point I don't want to take another penny of anybody's money ever again. So we started these lean marketing masterclasses, and then we had this great idea, like we've always loved books, we could write a book on this. And so we wrote a book, and that was part of the thing. And we saw, like, when we were running that for about a year, at the same time, we told all of our employees, we are winding down the business. We're not going to make you redundant, but do please find another job and let us know. We had a lease for another 3 years, so we were in no hurry. We couldn't get out. And so we did that. Everybody eventually kind of left. The offices got emptier and emptier because they, you know, the offices we took on, we were imagining a team of 50. And so we made everybody redundant. In hindsight, I could have sold that business and stepped out of the way. But I didn't know that you could do that then. I honestly didn't have any kind of consciousness that that was a thing to do with businesses. Like the idea of an exit strategy didn't even enter my mind when I started it. So very naive, really, and not sophisticated at all.
So when you wrote your book, did you use a publisher?
No, well, this is the question. This is the crux about why I'm a publisher and not. I don't see myself as an author.
Okay.
I'd read a book. I think it was called "Swimming with Piranha Makes You Hungry." I don't know if you've come across that book. And it was talking about ecosystems. And I was thinking, well, there are loads of authors in the ecosystem. There aren't many publishers. So do I want to be an author competing with all the other fish in that part of the ecosystem? Or do I want to be a publisher where the fish will come to me, so to speak? You know, then I'll be kind of in a position. And so we made the decision very early. We were going to self-publish the book, keep the income, keep complete control. And this was before print on demand. So this was kind of 2003. It was a difficult time to do that. And we printed 12,000 books. So we wrote the book. My background, because of the copy and the design, I was able to typeset it and, you know, do the cover. The cover was awful. The title of the book was awful. We made every mistake going. And so just to preface this, I'm a publisher now. I've got no business being in publishing. I haven't had any formal training as a publisher. I just started a publishing business based on what I kind of figured out the hard way. So we wrote the book, self-published it, ordered 12,000 because that made the unit price make sense, and then proceeded to sell them or give them away to build the lean marketing masterclass business, the kind of lean marketing training business. What we found though quite quickly is we enjoyed doing the book so much. We had another brainwave, which is what if we did more books? Like we could then, you know, if we did books for all of our clients, because it's been so good for us. And one thing that happened, Debs was the face of the business. She was getting speaking. We'd speak anywhere, like anywhere where I could get Deb on a stage, we'd get her up there and we might get clients. We wouldn't care if we got paid or not. That wasn't really the aim. As soon as we had a book out and we could say co-author of, the book was called The Gorillas Want Bananas. It's still available on Amazon, and it's cringy and how badly done it was, even though I still believe it's a great book and the message was good and the content was good. She got paid £1,000 for a 15-minute slot, and it was in the Netherlands. She got flown out and got, just because she had author. That was the only change we could see. And so we started thinking, well, if we did this for our clients, like the book has been a real game changer there. We could build a whole business just doing books. And we kind of naively, again, just said, we'll just do it 50-50, traditional model. We'll do all the publishing stuff. We'll pay the authors royalties if we make any money from the sales. And we did that. We did about 20 books before we actually generated enough income to actually say we had a full-time personal income each. And that was after having a really big business. So the business had kind of wound down, and there are all kinds of challenges in that. Like trying to sack clients is really difficult, that have come to depend on you. How you do that in a sensitive way without leaving them in the lurch was more challenging than I thought it would be. So we kind of told them, and one or two clients, we thought we'll just put our fees up in the short term, and they'll kind of get the message that they're a high kind of they're a high maintenance client, and they just carried on paying to the point when we just said, look, we just got to tell them we don't want to do it anymore.
Right.
And we didn't want to do that. We kind of wanted to be the it's you, not us. It's like it's us, not you kind of thing. Like they dumped us.
So again, what challenges there? What were the things that you didn't foresee in terms of approaching other businesses to publish your books? Or was it pushing against an open door?
it was kind of wide open. People had been making stuff like this was the ebook era. This is when you could charge 67 quid for an ebook. It was like, I mean, we sold the Gorillas Want Bananas. We sold all 12,000 of them for £25 each. You know, that was the retail price. It was overpriced. I mean, we're talking 2003. I mean, nearly 20 years ago, we were charging kind of a high retail price for the book. So the challenge wasn't there. There were people who'd written content. They'd written great ebooks and stuff. And we're like, we can turn that into a real book. Like we can turn it into a print book and then sharing the proceeds. And one thing that happened just at the time we did that, and it was like amazing piece of serendipity, was the advent of print on demand, digital print. So Lightning Source became a force. There was Lulu back then. I wouldn't recommend using Lulu now for any self-publishers, but they do a good quality print. The pricing doesn't work. Ingram Spark now would be the place I'd point people. So there were all these kind of opportunities coming up where I was like, we don't even have to hold stock. Like we don't have to invest in 12,000 books and then try and shift them and store them. We can literally just get a great idea, package it and sell it and use it to, and we'd already cottoned on to the idea. This was helping our clients, our authors, to sell themselves. It wasn't really about book sales for them. It was for us at the time. The business model was purely a traditional publishing model. We needed to sell books to make money. And I'll touch on that in a bit because we moved from that when Lucy joined my business a bit later.
The message I'm getting there is at every given point in your life, when you came to a point where it seemed not like you're settling, but it became more about doing the job than living the life, you rechecked with yourself and said, whoa, hang on, I need to redesign. What's going on here? I don't want to do something just for the fee. And about the publishing, you could have easily just done this marketing thing and create this one book and then sold marketing courses, but then you rechecked, you thought, hang on, do I want to be a piranha? Do I want to be above this? Actually, if a book did this well for us, what could it do it for others? So you saw an opportunity there, and you didn't look that way and saw the crowd. Oh, there's no publishers, therefore it's not a great business model. You thought there are no publishers. There's an opportunity.
Exactly, and I already saw the hungry people that would be authors that would want to work with us. It's like we've got a ready-made offer. The thing was, though, it's kind of a fundamental belief, and I believe I think at the time it did what it needed to do to get the business that we got. But I still think it was a mistaken belief. After having the clients for 6 years and thinking, God, that was hard, I said, I made a solemn vow, I will never take paying clients ever again. So the agreement with the authors was a 50-50 split. We don't take a fee. We send you money. And it was all about, like, in my mind, the energy was, I'm going to send you money. So therefore you don't own me. Like you don't own a piece of my time. Like the agreement is very clear. I send you money. We partner on this. The reality is you still get the same questions you get from a paying client when you work in partnership with somebody and they're trying to sell books, just as a traditional publisher will attest. So it didn't quite work that way. So we did that, that was Bookshaker. That was from 2003 till roughly 2009. And Lucy came along. So Lucy, my co-director in Rethink Press, which is a business now, she came along with a book, which we titled The Real Secret. It wasn't called that when she brought the book to me. We kind of developed it a bit. And she got on really well. Just before that, Debs, my sister, had left the business. I'd brought her out of that business, and she'd moved to Spain. I'd moved to Spain. I lived there for a year and thought, I'm not ready to live in Spain yet. I want to come back to the UK. She wanted to stay in Spain, so we split. But she was the grown-up. The reason I encouraged her to join me in the first place is I saw her as the grown-up, the responsible one. And so what Lucy noticed, she got me minus Debs. And she very, very clever, smartly noticed there's an opportunity here, which is you could do some help with project management, I feel.
But she didn't know your backstory then at that point?
No, nothing really. No. She just, she'd found us somehow. Marketing was something I was good at. So we had a big list at one point. We haven't emailed for years because it was a different kind of list. So I had lots of people coming to us. I had a relatively good reputation for publishing good books. Lucy'd found me, sent a book. I liked the book. We published the book. We worked well together. It was a nice creative, vibe when we nailed the title and subtitle for a book. And then at the end of the project, she said, I'm really pleased with the results. I really like the book. But I've noticed, in the process, I think you could probably do with some help with kind of admin and project management. And I'm like, you couldn't be more right, Lucy. That's exactly what has been gone. And I was having a whale of a time. Like the business was doing well, but it was chaotic. I am a chaos kind of causing person. I'm not a process follower. Right. And so Lucy brought that kind of level. She she brought things in that were really smart. So I had like 180 days terms going both directions. So I give authors books in advance, say, oh yeah, pay me in 180 days. I then had some payment terms with some of the printers we were using for 180 days the other end. I had no idea what was going on financially between that, because
Right.
I'm always playing in the moment. Lucy tightened that up, so we pay immediately, we invoice immediately. She tightened that up straight away, and she noticed another thing that I'd lost sight of, because my business model was publisher model, which is sell books, make money. I'd lost sight. I kind of lost my way, and I knew this from the start. This is why it worked so well. The real purpose of the book is to sell the author. It's to sell the author and their business, and I'd lost sight of that. And so Lucy was working with me as the commissioning editor effectively at this point, and authors would come to us with their book proposal. Lucy would review it, and every so often she'd bring one to me saying, I think we should go ahead with this. And I'd be like, I don't know if it'll sell enough. And that was my main question: is it going to sell enough copies? And Lucy's like, but there's a really good business case for this book. This would be a really good, viable, valuable book for the readers, and it will help the author. And I'm like, I get it, but like I can't necessarily risk the capital to do that book, because we may lose money. And so Lucy suggested, and I was dead against the idea. I'll admit that. Why don't we charge? Why don't we charge the authors for the service? And going right back to my belief at that point was, I'm not taking another penny from a paying client ever again. And I was holding on to that belief. I'd run a business for 6 years with that belief, and kept to it. Like, I hadn't taken a paying client from anything for any of the projects. When we changed focus, what I noticed was, first of all, I said, Lucy, you confront that. Like, I'll do all the publishing stuff that I know how to do in the background, but like, you front that. I want to see how it goes. So we started Rethink Press, and that's what we called it. And we got a few. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, you got a few clients, and I know that I've been fortunate enough to publish my book with you as well.
Yeah.
In that time, it seemed the way you're talking about it is all very smooth.
Yeah.
Things happened at the right time. Any challenges you came across were not major to the point whereby you had to think about life decisions. Is that how it was?
No. I probably I'm an eternal optimist. I probably filter out all of the kind of the tough stuff, because that's what keeps me kind of motivated to keep going. No, I mean, tough things. When I bought my sister's business, I like said, everything in the bank, like, that's what I'm buying the business for. So I had like 3 months of no money, because that's how long it took for the book revenue to come in. Like 3 months of like, how am I going to pay bills? But Debs needed to leave. I wanted to carry on. That seemed like the fair deal. So we did it, but the bank was empty. So I had 3 months of kind of thinking, was this a big gamble? Is it going to pay off? I had things I didn't like doing in that publishing business. So royalties is a real messy, difficult thing that you don't want to get wrong, because there's ethics around this. Like, if you owe somebody a penny more than you pay them, like that feels wrong. So you want to get that right, and that's kind of like pressure admin. And every single book you do, that increases the complexity of that process. So it went from it was a very manual process with a little Excel spreadsheet to now we need to invest in software, to oh god, I didn't know publishing software was that expensive, to then learning, God, I don't even know how to fill in this software. That was part of the journey. It was like some of the admin stuff is complex. Some of the way the payment terms work in the industry of publishing is quite complex as well. So because print on demand, you don't get the money till 90 days after you've paid it. But in order to make the business move, we wanted to pay our authors as soon as it had been reported. So initially we were doing quarterly royalty runs, and kind of we were 90 days ahead. So we were paying authors money we hadn't actually got yet.
Right.
From literally from pure, like, what was left over and profit. So that was an interesting model just to get off the ground. That could have potentially sunk us if we were unlucky. And also, like, the first probably 18 books that I published didn't make enough money to make a full-time income. As I said, it was like the 20th book was where some magic happened. I'm like, now there's enough to pay me and Debs a reasonable wage. And again, it wasn't really about the huge amount of money, but enough to pay the bills, have a livelihood.
I'm always fascinated about printed stuff, because in the age of the internet, there's nothing you can't find by Google. And there was a time where they would say, well, there'll be no more newspapers. Why would anybody want to buy something because you can get at a touch of a button? Is that not do you see that not the same with books, that people are going to think, do you know what, why do I need to buy a book? I can find everything online and digest it when I get, and potentially for free.
Yeah,
Why
interesting.
do you
Yes.
think the books hold so much power? For me, it changed how my business
Yeah.
was positioned.
I
Why do
yeah.
books hold that power?
I think it's because it's a physical artifact. It's a physical manifestation of something you've done. You don't have to plug it in. It's instantly viral. You can just pass it to somebody else and they can instantly access it. You don't like, you think about audiobooks or see, you still have to turn it on and click and go somewhere. Like a book is instant. It's instant and it's an artifact in its own right. You just look at some books and you're like, I want to own one. I want one in my hands. So I think there's power there. I think culturally, like, you know, through history, at least in recent history, the idea of a book as something that's been written was so difficult originally to do that,
Mm.
that it's got huge kind of value. It's like almost like a magic tome, and I think there's magic in a physical book that isn't there just in the content. It's not. It's beyond the content. It's the actual artifact, the asset that you can hold in your hand, that you can pop on somebody's desk, that you can pass to somebody else, that can find its way in the world into all kinds of places, that it can almost time travel. Like if I go back to the Tony Robbins book, I think that one was published like in the 80s. Like I was like probably 6 when that book came out.
So,
And it time traveled to me as a kind of a 12-year-old.
so do you think, doesn't matter how advanced we get technology-wise and chips in our body and we can just touch our forefinger and we get the information in our head, do you think there'll be a time that books will never ever be
I don't think they'll
time
go
of
forever. I
museum?
think I think generationally, like if I look at my two sons, so Jack's 6 and Georgie's nearly 9, they consume loads of video. They consume tons and tons of video. I imagine when they get busier and they're doing other stuff, it'll be audio. They learn quite a lot from video and audio, and they're kind of plugged in. But I always think, like, you saw the power cuts recently in New York. Like when the power goes off, you're stuck with like, you got old tech. None of that stuff works. Like you know, you think of like this, the kind of the zombie apocalypse, or what's going on now. You know, genuinely really scary times for some people in some industries. Like a book doesn't need to be plugged in. It doesn't need to be attached to the cloud. You don't need the internet to access it and get the value. So I don't think books will go away. But what I've noticed in the business is that actually all the formats kind of reinforce each other. So if you've got a book, an ebook, and an audio book, it's likely your audience will buy all of them because they just want to consume it in the way that's most likely. But non-fiction, especially, people seem to like physical
Yeah.
books.
And the other part of a book, it's probably the one single thing from an asset point of view that increases credibility exponentially. You know,
Yeah.
I could create a video, I could appear in a newspaper article, I could do a podcast like we're doing
Yeah.
now. But my personal experience and when I meet other authors, nothing has the power than having a book.
I agree totally.
Why is that?
I think it's because all the other mediums are transient. It's a bit like, you know, like if you think about newspaper, even like print medium, we think about newspapers, it's kind of yesterday's news. And so we're kind of in a constant feed, aren't we? If you think about social media, it's a feed of information coming through, but it's kind of like, I've missed the moment now, that moment's gone. And the book is kind of one permanent thing. It's like, here I am, I'm sticking my flag in the ground. Here's a physical manifestation of me that's going to live on beyond me. It's going to live on beyond any technology that's going on. I think there's real power in that. It's a real sense of certainty, and you're putting a little piece of yourself out there. And I'd go as far as to say, like with what's happening with lockdown and people working from home and doing more online, is actually being able to send somebody a little physical thing just creates a different type of connection you're not going to get just through the screen. So you could send a book. We send Lucy and I, we were doing a published day, published workshop. We sent everybody cards and books in the post, and they were all there with their cards and books. So it's like we kind of reached out to them with a little bit of physicality, even though it wasn't us personally. They're engaging with what we're doing physically, and I think that's part of the magic of books. But I think that the main thing is that permanence. It's like it's there for good.
When you look at your own journey up to now, what are you most proud of? Apart from your children.
Yeah, God, good question. I'm proud. Like I remember when I started a business, I'd read. It probably actually came from Only Fools and Horses when he said I'm successfully self-unemployed, and I'm like, and then I read a book by I think it was the same book by Jeff Birch. I think the book was called Resistance is Useless, but he talked about self-employment as you'll never be unemployed ever again. You just might not have any money. And so one thing I'm proud of is I've always been able to look after the basic needs and have a livelihood the whole way through, even taking all the risks, doing all the things I've done. I've never got into a position where I'm like, I'm broke and I need to ask for some money. I've always found a way somehow to be resourceful enough to pay for things. And so I'm proud of that. I think that's quite an
You
achievement.
you mentioned the lockdown. You mentioned, people could be listening to this podcast at any time, and
Mm.
but the unique thing about this pandemic is that everybody in the world has experienced it, whether some um, different to others, some worse, some good. What has that period given you?
Well, it's reaffirmed something we did. So another belief that I had way back. So one was like, I'm never going to take money from clients ever again, which I've gone back on. We got a really successful business, being paid, doing what we're doing. And it changed the whole dynamic, actually. I'm able to
Yeah.
serve much better doing that. The other one was I'm never employing people full time ever again, because that was the other kind of thing that kind of made me feel trapped. Like I'd created a thing that was a trap. And so we've built the whole Rethink team with remote workers. They already work from home. So when lockdown happened, lots of businesses like in flux, what are we going to do? We've been using Zoom and Trello and communicating this way and running complex projects this way for like nearly 10 years as a team. And so we didn't skip a beat. We didn't skip a beat in terms of delivery. We've got an airplane going over that never happens.
I know it's the leanness in it, and people think to generate, to create a good business, generate good money, fabulous money. You don't need offices. You don't, and especially this time where the remote working is sort of kicked in,
Yeah.
is you can be so lean, have the lifestyle you want, and not compromise on the money or the wealth you want to create.
Yeah. So we were really like, it was kind of again just a belief where it served me, this one, I think. And I think all the beliefs serve you for the time that they're valid. Like, and I'm happy to throw away a belief if I see a new one that's more useful or more accurate.
That's really good to hear, because that shows a level of self awareness whereby, and sometimes people get pig headed or stubborn. Well, I've got this belief, and if I choose now to change the belief, have I lived a lie? Well, no.
Yeah.
We evolve, we change, circumstances change, everything.
Yeah, so that exactly, and that, Lucy did that with the we should charge for this, and I'm like, I had a real strong belief, knowing the businesses that were out there charging at the time, that I don't want to do a paid for publishing business, because they were all like, they all to me seemed a bit kind of dodgy, like they were just taking money for a promise that didn't exist. So I said to Lucy, like, if we do this, like I'm gonna have to do an about turn, because I've been advocating that never pay to be published, like it's not a good thing to do. And then so I've got to do an about turn. I said, like, I want to sleep well at night, so we need to tell people eyes wide open they may never make the money back from book sales that they invest with us. It just may not happen. In my experience, I've published, like, by then probably 400 books.
Yeah.
So we've always been open. We've been in a position where, even when it was lean and really startup stage with Rethink Press, where we've turned clients away that weren't a good fit, or we didn't think the book was good, or we didn't think it was going to serve them. And they were under the false impression they're going to make millions from just selling books, whereas you need a whole business behind the book really to make the millions.
Absolutely. Unless you're J.K. Rowling or some famous celebrity, you're not going to make money from books.
There are always exceptions, aren't there? But it's just like in the news, there are exceptions to everything. The news focuses on the exceptional stuff, but the norm is that might not happen. So let's make it more certain by working out where the book can add value, and making sure the proposition was clear, that we're not saying, like, become a bestseller overnight and make loads of passive income from selling your book. We're saying a book is a useful tool in building your credibility. And so I've always been able to sleep well, knowing I've kind of done the eyes wide open, honest, with integrity kind of approach to, and occasionally you lose clients and you lose sales by doing that, but it's always better in the long run than to have somebody disappointed 3 years on.
It's been fascinating talking to you, because there's so many things you said that I didn't know about your journey. So before we finish, one question I've got for you: what do you want your legacy to be? What in the end, what do you want to look back on and think, yeah, that's the reason why?
Yeah, the thing, I think I might have already achieved it, is that I know in a couple of 100 years' time they're going to be books with the Rethink logo on them in people's bookshelves, in people's houses. So I've created some permanence. I've made a mark in that respect, on behalf of lots of other people as well, because it'll be in conjunction with the authors we work with. Their books will be on people's shelves, and they'll be like, what was this interesting company called Rethink Press? What were they about?
Just out of interest, how did the name come about? How did the name come, Rethink?
No idea. This is, me and Lucy just threw loads of names around, and we until we got to one, we said Rethink, and then I designed this little logo. We're having our brand updated soon, so like I designed the logo, and by design I mean it really loosely. You don't know how well something's going to go, so it took me like 5 minutes. I said, what do you think of this? Lucy said, yeah, that looks good, and we just went with it, and we haven't changed it.
Okay.
So we didn't give a lot of thought to some of the stuff. I think some startup businesses or early stage businesses will really focus on that sort of stuff. And to potentially to the detriment, because they forget you just need a proposition and an audience and some agreement about how that's going to work and who's going to pay for what.
Indeed. Joe, I'm fascinated by your talk, and I'm really proud to call you my publisher, and hopefully by the time someone listens to this podcast, my book Play Your Game is out. Find it on Amazon. Hopefully it will be. So if people do want to hear more about you, or even they're interested in publishing a book, where can they contact you?
Okay, so on Facebook, it's facebook.com/getpublished. I was really early on that.
Good.
So you get me there. Bookshaker on Twitter, so @Bookshaker. Instagram for Rethink Press, @Rethink Press, and likewise Rethink Press on Instagram. LinkedIn, you find me on there. I think I'm Joe Gregory 4 or something like that. Yeah.
Perfect. Great.
So
and we'll put all the links to where they can contact you against this podcast as well, so they can get hold of you. Joe, it's been fascinating. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Beiji. It's been great.
And we'll look forward to speaking to you very soon, and hopefully many, many more authors.
Thank you for listening. To find out more about myself or the Change Your Game Scorecard, you can visit changeyourgamescorecard.com, where you can find out how strong your game is and get a full detailed report. Also, if you found this episode useful, please do leave a rating or a review in iTunes to help others discover it too. Until the next time, my name is Beiji Slanky.